Hi everyone, I'm Robert Moody. I'm the music director of the Portland Symphony Orchestra. I am excited to talk to you right now about the kickoff to our 2015-2016 season. This is the beginning of the season. It's the second year of our Beethoven Festival, our Beethoven cycle. You may recall that in the opening year of the cycle, you heard 3 of the 9 Beethoven symphonies. This year you hear 3 more, and then one more season from now, you will hear the final 3. So if you make all of these concerts, you will get a chance to hear all 9 of the great Beethoven symphonies in the course of 3 seasons. Some people had asked me during the first season if there was a reason that I did not want to have us hear the symphonies in chronological order. So start with Symphony number 1 and then at the end of 3 years finish with Symphony number 9. We did not do that, and the reason was I wanted the listener to hear Beethoven at his mature self, sort of in the center of his writing when we started the festival. So that's why last year we played Beethoven Symphonies number 3, number 6, and number 7. Now we go back to the beginning and we start with Beethoven Symphony number 1 to see where the genesis of his compositional greatness came from. And okay, if I'm going to be completely honest, I was also somewhat inspired by my youth and my addiction to the Star Wars series. Because you see, Star Wars starts off with episodes 4, 5, 6, then moves back to the beginning, and if you are a fan like me, you know that coming up this year, we'll now do the final 3. So it was in that vein that I was also thinking about not starting in one place and moving through, but sort of jumping around to look at this great genius, this great composer, Beethoven. The first symphony of Beethoven could be called Mozart's Symphony number 42. The great classical composer who came just before Beethoven was Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. There's one story that they met. I hope the story is true, that Mozart in his early 30s, which unfortunately was also near the very end of his life, met the young Beethoven. And the story is that Mozart heard Beethoven play, and then he proclaimed to his wife Costanza, he said, "Keep your eye out for this name Beethoven. He's going to be very famous one day." I hope it's true because the connection from one composer to the next is readily apparent, especially in this first Beethoven symphony. Mozart wrote 41 symphonies, and Beethoven's first symphony is a natural successor to the arch classical style, the perfect form of writing. This is not yet the Beethoven who is losing his hearing and beginning to fight his inner demons, and from that bring us the Romantic era. This is the Beethoven caught up in form and perfect architecture and using that structure to make some of the most beautiful music you shall ever hear, and that you shall hear in the Beethoven First Symphony. The concert kicks off with one of my favorite pieces in the repertory to kick off a season. It's the Dvorak Carnival Overture. I have a great personal history with this piece. This is actually the first full orchestral work I ever conducted. When I was a senior in college, my undergrad is a wonderful school called Furman University, and when I was a senior there, I was the second student in the university's history to be the student conductor of both the college chorale, the college opera company, and the college orchestra. And with the symphony orchestra, the university orchestra, I got to perform at the spring term concert of my senior year, the Dvorak Carnival Overture. When you hear the piece and how sort of rollicking it is, really from beginning to end, you'll see why it has its name and why I think it's such a great way to kick off a season. The longest work, the grandest work, if you will, by far on this opening concert cycle is the final work on the program. After intermission, the stage will become full with chorus, children's chorus, tenor soloist, orchestra, an incredible amass performing Berlioz Te Deum. Now, Hector Berlioz, who lived during the time of Beethoven, in fact, he was in his early 20s when Beethoven died, Hector Berlioz wrote music in the most romantic and grand scope and sweeping of ways. A great connection to Beethoven is that Berlioz first wrote the themes for what was to become the Te Deum as what he imagined to be a fantasy celebration of Napoleon Bonaparte. But just like Beethoven, he became disenchanted with Napoleon Bonaparte, and he ended up not making this work have any connection to Napoleon. Instead, he made it a grand Te Deum. Te Deum is Latin for praise. It comes from the part of the Catholic Mass in praise to God. And the chorus, orchestra, tenor soloist, who, by the way, is René Barbera. I've actually known René Barbera for many, many years since he was a student in college. He has since gone on to win the Met Opera competition and sung as lead tenor in the great Italian operas, great French and Italian operas throughout the world. He has debuted at every major house. He's become quite the famous tenor, world famous tenor, and we are very fortunate to have him with us for this concert. One last thing to tell you about the Berlioz. It is grand because of the forces on the stage. It's also grand because of one more instrument. It calls for heavy, I dare say, rhapsodic use of the organ. And this is really the final reason I chose this work to kick off the season, because we have the Kaczmar organ, one of the finest organs anywhere in the country, one of the most iconic instruments in the country. You may or may not know this, but Portland is one of only 2 cities in the country to have a municipally hired organist. San Diego and Portland are the 2 cities. That's how much a part of our culture this Kaczmar organ is. So we get to pair the organ with chorus, with orchestra, with Beethoven, with the Dvorak Carnival Overture for one whirlwind of a kickoff. See you at the concerts.